Something we need to talk about is how long ago did the people of West Africa make their way to, first of all, Mecca, and then just Saudi Arabia in general, and other Arabian areas. Now, remember, there's something called the Hajj, which a lot of people every single year took from West Africa to Saudi Arabia. But some decided that going back was not something they were going to do. And so, of course, this is a depiction of a mosque. It shows that the people of ancient, or let's say Middle Ages, although this word doesn't make sense in the African context, but let's say the Middle Ages or whatever of Africa, this is a mosque from that time, shows that, of course, they were Muslim, and this is why they ended up in those regions. Not everyone who came was a slave of some kind. In fact, like I'm showing you, these people voluntarily moved from there. The word Hasawi or Hasau is the Arabic word Hausa, and the Hausa from Nigeria made their way from Kanem Bornu all the way to Saudi Arabia because, of course, they were Muslim. Why is this important? Well, it's important because the black Africans that live there that are from this house are a large community. Now they're a minority by every way you could look at it, but they're a pretty large community, meaning that it's not 10 or 20 people. We're talking about a couple 100,000. In fact, the highest estimates put them well over 1 million. So there's 1 million people who are of Hausa origin. Some of them speak the language, the Hausa language, in the Arabian regions. And of course, you can see that a lot of them, these ones are actually from Nigeria, but a lot of them, they kept their culture and everything and brought it over there. Some of them were all very, very modern. They came there in the modern times, but of course, to their surprise or to their glee or whatever word you want to use, they got there and met people of their own kind, and so they have a community that they can join. Now, the Hausa people have a history that's very, very old. In fact, that entire region has a history that's very old. But before I go to the history, let's just show one soccer player. This guy's last name are both Hasau, which is the Hausa word. So Kanem Bornu is one of these civilizations, and the Kanem files or the Kanem writings are the ones that I've shown you before that depict all the kings that ruled in Kanem, and the very early ones are written down as animists, meaning that these people who were Muslim were very aware of the fact that they came from a African animist background, and they wrote about it and did all of that. And in fact, there's even writings or hearings about the fact that some of these people, they believe that an Arab actually came to these regions to these people at the time. Although there are some people who believe that someone from Kanem went to Arabia and then came back with more information. Either way, they created the script Ajami, which Ajami is a sort of, it looks a bit like Arabic, and it was basically their own way of establishing themselves as a independent civilization. Because remember, one thing that will make an different people from around the world respect you is if you're able to organize. And these people were well ready to organize themselves. In fact, the Ajami language seems to have existed prior to them joining Islam, and then it spread because of Islam, after the Islamic language and the Islamic thing joined within it and the Arabic joined within it, making it a spreading language or a writing system. This is a depiction of black Muslims or just Muslims try coming to pray. The Hausa people that I'm talking about, the one that are written down about, ha they have this history, but I'm gonna have to read the article itself so that we have a true understanding of why there's so many people like this living in that region and they're still tied to their culture and language and they're not from the Horn of Africa. Hassau, uncovering the history of Saudi Arabia's Afro-Arab Hausa community. Our documentary looks at the West African Muslim communities who escaped British colonialism and settled in the Arabian Peninsula in the 19th century. The population of the Arabian Peninsula stems largely from Bedouin tribes that have been living in the region for thousands of years. What's less well known is that the area has long attracted migrants from across the Islamic world, including Muslim communities as far west as the Niger Basin. Sada Malam Fasi is an artist and filmmaker from the northern Nigerian city of Kaduna. He specializes in Hausa culture and history, including that of the Hausa diaspora in the Arab world, who are the focus of this documentary, Hausawi, which means Hausa in Arabic. Numbering more than 50 million, the largely Muslim West African ethnic group are spread across a number of countries, although are found mainly in Nigeria and Niger. While the number of Hausa in modern Saudi Arabia is relatively small, the story of their origin provides a glimpse into an important episode in the group's history, namely the response among West Africans to British colonialism. At 29, Malam Fashi has already established his intellectual authority on Hausa culture and heritage. He is the director of the Hausa International Book and Art Festival. Well, enough about him. They depict some Hausa people. Saddam Malafashi meets descendants of Hausa who moved to Saudi Arabia in the 19th century. I read literature written in Hausa from the 30s and 40s. They were the first set of novels published in Nigeria. Malafashi tells Middle East Eye. My father was a professor of Hausa literature, literary history, so naturally these are the stories I was surrounded with. It prompts the way I do things now. So let's read this next part, which depicts the different time zones. So in May 2022, Malafashi was one of the dozens of international artists who won spot on the Albert Art Residency in Saudi Arabia, organized by the country's Ministry of Culture. It was my first time going to Saudi Arabia. The perception I had of the country came from pilgrims who mainly visited Mecca and Medina, he says. It was during this time that he first encountered Saudi citizens who were not of Arab origin. During my stay in Saudi Arabia, I was interested in understanding the Hausa diaspora who have been there for centuries, and I wanted to know the crux of that, he says. I did not know that research would take form, but I thought a documentary would be a good idea, he tells Middle East Eye. I learned that Saudi Arabia is not limited to the holy sites and that there are other people of color that are not non-Arabs. Also, it opened me up to the world generally. Migration from Western and Sub-Saharan Africa to the Hijaz region of Arabian Peninsula have been happening since the dawn of Islam. Many arrived as pilgrims and decided to stay on, and others, particularly from the Swahili coast, were brought in by slave traders. The descendants of both these groups would eventually assimilate into the population. But the recent relationship between Saudi Arabia and communities from present day Nigeria, however, can be understood against the backdrop of British colonialism in West Africa in the late 19th century. British naval patrols preventing transatlantic slave trading made illegal in the empire from 1807 coincided with Britain's growing desire for commerce in palm oil and cotton in West Africa. Now, it is kind of impossible to go from West Africa all the way to Saudi Arabia by land and not cross Egypt. And because of this, a lot of not ancient, a lot of people from the Hausa regions ended up in Egypt because obviously it was one of the rest places. Like if you were going to travel all the way to Saudi Arabia, which was a long trip, it was one of the rest places that you would stay for a long time before you carried on. Now, this had its consequences in that a lot of Hausa words have been adopted into the modern Egyptian language. There is a couple of people that are worth mentioning, but I'm going to mention only one, which is a Muslim from the Borneo regions, and he, from Nigeria, he died in Egypt after he had taken the Hajj. His name was Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Fulani al-Kishnawi, and he was born in 1699. And as you can see there, if we read, it says scholar, mathematician, astrologer, Arabic grammarian, and jurist from Katsina, present day northern Nigeria. Al Kashnawi studied at the Goboru Minaret in Katsina before leaving for Cairo, Egypt in 1732, where he published in the Arabic a work titled A Treatise on the Magical Use of Letters of the Alphabet, which is a mathematical scholarly manuscript of procedure for constructing magic squares up to the order 11. Muhammad al-Kishnawi was a Fulani scholar born in Danroko in Katsina in modern-day Katsina State. Dan Rako was known for its association with the Wangara traders from Mali who had established a presence in the area. The town was later sacked by Muhammad Bello and it no longer exists. He was born into a Muslim family and studied the religion and the holy book of the Quran. Among his teachers were Muhammad al-Wali al-Barnawi, a famous scholar from Kanem, Bornu, Muhammad Fudi, the famous Usman Dan Foldio, and Muhammad al-Bindu Burubindi, another famous person from Kanem, Bornu. He became famous in Hausaland and Bornu and attracted many students. Like most people who existed at this time, he, as a mathematician, astrologer, and scholar, did many things. But of course, he did the magic square thing, which we first have to explain what that is. But here's a quick video that will explain it.
This is a truly remarkable magic square. Every single row of numbers has the exact same sum. This is the same sum as every single column of numbers. The two diagonals also have the same sum, and every single 2 by 2 grid also has the same sum. What's even more amazing, if we turn this square upside down, we get another magic square with these exact same properties. We can then go back to the beginning, and we can even take the mirror image of this magic square, and we get the exact same properties. What wonderful mathematical objects exist, if only we have time to explore and to appreciate them.
We could go through a whole bunch of scholars from Kanem Bornu, like Aluma, who wrote about the wars in Kanem. But, there's not much to say without going straight into the history of Kanem Bornu. And remember, by this time, people said, oh, the Islamic age had already given up its scholarliness. I mean, look here. they're still doing mathematics at a high level. They did not give up anything. What happened was the Europeans slowly chipped away until they had to give up. Even some people say that the scholarly stuff died after Genghis Khan came, but I assure you that it continued right after that. And even not Genghis Khan, but Haluga Khan also described seeing great things, and then Ibn Battuta, even after that, described seeing great things. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, by the way, the Hausa people have been living there for a long time.